like, I remember in high school, like, that was terrifying to me, was, like, my car being broken.
It sucked.
Was, like, the worst case scenario. And, you know, granted, I live 45 minutes from my high school, so it was
okay, yeah, that's pretty far.
It was unfortunate when, you know, your car was having issues in any way.
Right.
Like, it was like 45 minutes of, like, you know, also just miles. So
yeah.
It was like,
right.
It was rough.
Yeah, that's a long way.
So it was always, like, the biggest fear. I was like, man, like, if the car's down.
What am I going to do?
Yeah, but you seem like you were pretty comfortable with, like,
oh, yeah.
Well, the car breaks sometimes.
Yeah, it was, you know, I had the Porsche for like a year and a half, and I was like the kid in high school. It was like straight piped turbo, so it was loud, and I'd show up late. My friend would text me like, "You just got to school, didn't you?" You know, and I had on-job training because I had my credits or whatever, so I'd leave at lunch. And there was like 4 of us that left at lunch. And when I had my red 944, I had to go and exit down on I-4. So it's like I'd come out of school, get on I-4, one exit, get off. And like there was like 4 of us, and we would just race from one exit to the next to like 130, just floored until the exit. And someone that knew my dad or this step parent saw me do that. And then I got like my car taken away, even though it was in my name and my insurance. There's a whole lot there. I won't get into that. But basically, yeah, I worked at Steak and Shake, started drifting, Porsche, E36. Then there was a bunch of trades after that. Like, I was trading up for a while. Then I had some bad trades. But, like, I only made enough money to survive. So, like, I couldn't buy parts for my car. So it was like, oh, my car doesn't have coilovers, but I can trade for this car that does, you know. So I did a lot of trading. Like, I was a regular at the DMV. But I traded a lot, worked at Steak and Shake, got a job at Advanced. Like, I had applied online, forgot about it, and they called me, and I went and interviewed there. Because it was so hard to get my job at Steak and Shake. Like, I interviewed like 5 places, nobody wanted to hire me. And then I got the job at Steak and Shake. I'm like, I finally have a job.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't drive until I could get my own insurance, you know? So I get the job at Advanced. I'm like, this is the dream job. I get to work at a parts store, you know? Like, this is great. And I started working there as a counter person, and there was the commercial guy, Butch, and he started like kind of teaching me how to do the commercial side because nobody wanted to talk to anybody but Butch. Like, if they called and he wasn't there, they're like, I'll call back. So they started like trusting me, talking to me, and then the general manager there hated him. So he tried to get him fired, and they were like, he's too good at his job. So they moved him to another store, which is funny enough where I go get parts now. So he's now my parts guy like 12 years later.
Oh, okay.
Because I was like 19. But so I
still ripping on it.
He's still doing commercial. But so I took over for like the 2 weeks that they were looking for a replacement, and it was fine. Like, everything carried on as usual. The customers like me, but they were like insistent. They're like, we can't have a 19-year-old in this position. Like, it needs to be like an older person. Like, they wouldn't give me the job, even though I wanted it. So they hired this guy. And this guy is probably the biggest pathological liar I've ever met in my life, dude. So he says he's got 20 years experience and all this, all these snap-on tools and whatever. And I was like, dude, this guy is full of it. So I was telling my friends, they're like, no, I don't believe you. I'm like, watch. I called him, like I wasn't at work. And I'm like, hey, I need a piston return spring for a Mitsubishi Galant. And I made up some customer account. And he's like, oh, I haven't heard from you in a while. Like, it didn't even exist. And he's like, oh, yeah, I got the snap-on tool for that, for removing those piston return springs. They're a pain. And I'm like,
nice.
And then he's like, I can't find it in here. I'm like, that's weird. Like, it's in there. But so, like, the guy didn't know anything. And
shocking at a parts store.
Yeah, I know. But he was the commercial guy that like they made me not have the job. So anyway, the customers like basically revolted, which did feel pretty cool when I was 19. They were like, if you don't put Taylor in the position, like, we're done. Like, we're just not gonna, because this guy's an idiot, this other guy. So I got the job. I was like by far the youngest commercial guy. And that guy
knew now all the local shops.
Yeah, because I knew like they'd call me and I know by voice, you know, and I would hustle. Like, I had 2 computers, 2 phones, so I could answer. They'd tell me like what part, I'd be looking it up, and I'd answer the other phone, and like I was hustling. But I was like, oh, so he started working counter, and this is just how much of a pathological liar is. One day, he's like, I gotta go. My whatever. I just got the call that my uncle or granddad, his last name was Garrett. He's like, I got the call that my whatever passed away, and I'm inheriting Garrett, like Honeywell Garrett.
Oh. Wow.
They're picking me up on the private jet in 30 minutes, and I'm flying there because I'm inheriting millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And dude, everybody else in that store bought it.
From the auto parts store to
Yeah, I'm like, dude,
owner of
a probably billion-dollar corporation.
yeah.
That
military
guy,
supplying company.
That guy, man, he was so, I don't know whatever happened to him.
He inherited Garrett.
Oh yeah, true. Well, he was still there, I think, when I quit. So
now he's one of your sponsors, right?
well, no, I'm not sponsored by Gary. Not yet.
I figured they were on the
No, one day, hopefully, because I need some turbos from my RX-7. But yeah, this is all relevant to the story of the YouTube. I'm just giving you context. So.
Well, we can talk to the best turbo supplier in the country, Precision.
I know, yeah, give me
PTE.
contact info because I need some turbos. But anyway, so advanced, worked there, commercial. I had a kind of a life crisis where I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like I had planned on going to college and then I was like, I finished high school and just like didn't, And I was like, I need to go back to college. And my dad had always told me he would pay for my college because he didn't go to college. But he ended up doing really well, like quality assurance in the aerospace industry without a degree. But he was like, if you want to go, whatever. So in high school, I did like the AP courses. I did like 2 years of a second language. Like I did all the stuff to get the Bright Future Scholarship thing. So I'm like, I need to go back to college. So I decided to quit commercial and go to part-time. My boss gets mad, so he gives me 0 hours. So I just quit and went to O'Reilly's part-time. Started going to college. It was only like $800 a semester once everything was paid for. But it was like pulling teeth to get my dad to pay that, which my dad was a good guy for sure. Like he did a lot for us. He was in between a rock and a hard place. But semester and a half in, I had to move out. I got kicked out with like 3 days notice. Like on a Wednesday, I was told I had to be gone by Friday. And I'm like, dude, I just quit my good job to go to school. And now I got to get a full-time job again. So I moved into this like $500 one-room self-efficiency. It was like 5 units. Dude, it was so sketchy. Like my neighbor was like this disabled guy, and then like his sister and her boyfriend were living there, and they were definitely selling his medications next door. Like it was super sketch. But I needed to find a full-time job. So I found a job at this dealership, this used car dealership, and that was weird, dude. I still am convinced, I don't know if it's still there. It was like some sort of front. Like either they were shipping cars to Saudi Arabia, something weird was going on because it was like there was like areas you like could not go without a key code or whatever. But it was weird. And one day I walked by a room and the dude had like 100 monitors. Like he was just watching every area of the dealership, and like the main dude was like sketchy. But anyway, I got a job there as a service rider, and this dude trains me, and then the next day he's not there, and I'm like, where's the dude that's training me? They're like, it's you. And I'm like, I had 1 day of training and you want me to be a service rider? I'm like, what? So I was like,
difficult ass dealership job.
Right? I'm like, I guess I'll just figure it out. So I'm like trying to figure it out as I go. And everybody I talk to, I'm like, how long have you been working here? And they're like 2 months, a month, 3 months. And I'm like, this is not looking good. Like everyone who's here is fresh. Mm-hmm. So I had a job opportunity to work construction with a friend of mine. So I ended up taking that job, and it sucked, dude. It was like brutal. Like I would work, like I'd get to work at like 5 in the morning and generally get back at like 8 or 9 at night every day, 5 days a week. But it's like, even at Steak and Shake, like if I do something, I want to be good at it. Like that's just the way I am. So I wanted to be the best grill cook at Steak and Shake, And like I wanted to be the best at this construction job. And it was rewarding because like you're building stuff. But I ended up being like the main person for installs pretty quickly. But it sucked because there was like the boss, he was all right. There was a guy who did the fab work in the shop because we did these like commercial awnings. Like we do like the standard ones, like canvas ones, or like big like metal structures, whatever. He was just so annoying. Like we'd come back from like a 16-hour day and he has a 9 to 5 building stuff in the shop. They're hammered drinking beer and they're like, someone didn't replace the toilet paper roll. And it's like, dude, are you really complaining about that right now?
Yeah.
Like we've been gone for 16 hours. So I hated it.
Shop guys complaining to the installers.
Yeah, like about toilet paper in the shop. Like, come on, dude. Or he'd be like, oh, like no matter how fast you got the job done, it was never fast enough, And it's like, dude, I don't want to be gone for 16 hours. You think I'm like dilly-dallying out there? So I hated the job. And then I'd become friends with Chelsea, and my buddy Grafton, Andrew, who I lived with, was friends with Chelsea. And me, Chelsea, Grafton, Engelman, and David, we all went on a BMX ride in the trails in Ocala. And Chelsea was like, hey, do you like your job? And I'm like, no, dude, I hate my job. And he's like, oh, there's an opening at BC. You know, if you want, I can get you an interview. And I was like, sick, perfect, like I'm down. So then he hits me up. I go to work. My boss sends us home early, which is unusual, at 2 o'clock. He's like, I want you to leave for Alabama at 2 a.m. tomorrow for like 3 weeks. So Chelsea's like, hey, I can get you an interview next week. And I'm like, I'm going to be in Alabama. And I never quit a job without having another job lined up. But I was like, you know, I got to chance it. So I quit on the spot, which was a mess, but I quit. Because the guy who would install with me didn't have a license. So like, there was no one for you to go. My boss came to my house at 2 a.m. and was like, come on, you're leaving. I'm like, no, dude, I'm not going. Like, I'm done. So I panicked and I got another job immediately. Like I found a job working as a tech at this shop because I thought that because I'd swapped a couple SRs, I knew how to work on cars. And I learned that that was not the case. Like swapping an SR and a 240 is not the same as doing a timing belt on an Audi.
Yeah.
You know? So I started working at this shop. And there's a pretty funny story there. The shop foreman, he's like, bring in that minivan. And I'm like waiting to hear back from BC at this point. Maybe I hadn't gone to the interview yet. He's like, bring in this minivan and like, tell me what's wrong with the transmission. Like it only has reverse or something. So I bring it in and I'm looking at it and there's like an inch of RTV, like all around the transmission pan. And I like tell him, I'm like, hey man, whoever rebuilt this transmission, like had no idea what they were doing. Like they put way too much RTV, probably got sucked up in there and destroyed the transmission. And he just like grunts and walks away. And then the other tech comes over. He's like, hey man, he rebuilt that transmission. And I was like, oh no. Oh. So he hated me from then on out. And I went to the BC interview. I lied and said I was going to lunch or something, made up some story because it was like 45 minutes away. So it was like another huge gamble of like, I'm probably going to lose this job if I go to this interview. But I did it anyway. And I did lose the job because I went to the interview. And then I didn't hear back. And I was like, you know what? Last time when I quit my construction job, I was so like, I've got to get another job. I was like, I should have, like, I got a job in a day. Like, I should have just enjoyed it. Yeah. So at this point, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just give it some time, see if the BC thing works out. This was probably the last time in my life that I'm going to not have a job, you know, to where I can just like not have a job, probably work the rest of my life. So might as well make the most of it. And my buddy Crosby was in that same position and we hung out. It was a great 2 weeks. We just like hung out and were bums for 2 weeks. But I just kept going back to BC and eventually they gave me a second interview and they hired me. And then I found out that the shop guy who would complain at my construction job knew the general manager at BC and told him that I was like a terrible employee and not to hire me. So I almost didn't get hired at BC because of that. Just because of the other job. Yeah. And that guy was a jerk. But anyway, this is how I don't hold grudges. I still know him, talk to him. I don't care. Yeah. But so I started working at BC, ended up in the tech department. We did installs like. What did you start doing at BC? I started at sales, but they had like 4 salespeople already. And then they only had 1 tech guy, and then he was gone on like, he had like family emergency thing and was gone for like a month. And I was like, yo, guys, like, do you want me to just like go do tech? Because like there's nobody there, and there's like 4 of us in sales. So I started doing tech pretty early on. What does a tech position do at BC? It's just like you deal with if someone's having an issue, you email them, help them figure it out. Tech support stuff, yeah. Yeah. Custom build kind of stuff, and then also we would do R&D installs. So like if there was like a new car that came out, we had a new kit, we would install it and do all the documentation. So we also, it was kind of rare that we did this, but if we sponsored somebody coilovers and installed them, like I would install them. Guys, thank you for tuning in to the Bogetti Clips YouTube channel. For the full podcast, check us out on Bogetti Studios YouTube and all your audio platforms. Also, hit that subscribe button to not miss out on any of the new Bogetti clips coming up.